My name's Eric Welander. Welcome back to my channel. We got a lot of exciting new features this year for managing our Apple homes across Apple's different platforms and devices. And I want to go through all the details here. And of course, the star of the show are widgets, especially used with standby mode on the iPhone. But before we get into that, I want to cover very quickly a bunch of different updates and some details that you might have missed. First off, with watchOS, if you have a Series 6 Apple Watch or newer, basically an Apple Watch with an ultra wideband chip, then if you walk within 4 meters of a HomePod or HomePod Mini in your home playing audio, the controls to manage that audio come right up on your watch. Next is that inside the Home app on the Apple Watch, you now have an interface that looks a lot more like what they did on the iPhone and iPad last year, where you have this grid of cameras right above your accessory. So it's easy to get to live views of cameras right from your watch. Another big update is activity history. Now, when I first heard about this back in June, I thought this was going to be more just a log of every single event in your home, just to nerd out about the details like I would love to do and troubleshoot things, but it's much more of a practical application of security and safety in your home. So you can turn on this new setting by going to the Home app and then your home settings. And then under safety and security, there's an option at the top for activity history, where you can turn it on and give yourself and authorized users in your home access to up to a month of activity history data. Now, of course, it's not collecting this data until you turn the setting on, so you're not going to see much at first. If you go over to the security tab in the Home app, you'll see this option at the top for activity history events that you can access. And as you open and close doors, open and close your garage door, or lock your smart lock, it'll start to show those items there in activity history. So this could be all the more reason to go out and get some door sensors for some of your doors, like the Eve door and window that I love, or the Aqara contact sensor, because that'll show up here. Now, tvOS got a bunch of updates this year, but specifically for the smart home, if you go to Control Center, so holding down on the TV icon on your remote, then the home controls are just one swipe away from the main Control Center. So I think it's a little bit faster to get to this way, but then otherwise it's pretty much the same home UI there. And if you're into family photos, you can now use albums or memories from photos as screensavers on your Apple TV. You can also use Find My to find your remote if it goes, or when it goes missing. And you'll be able to use an iPhone or iPad paired with an Apple TV for FaceTime on the big screen. And later this year, you'll also be able to do the same thing with WebEx and Zoom. So maybe you'll want to be like me and add an Apple TV to your office. Could feel pretty official to put people on the big screen and use a nice camera for yourself at the same time. Now in the Home app, they improved some subtle details with the UI, especially the thermostat control, which has just a much nicer sort of curved slider and mode adjustment, and I love the layout better. And the bigger change is that if you're used to opening an accessory and then scrolling down to get to settings, you can no longer do that. You need to hit the gear, and then it'll bring up sort of a new modal view to show those settings. Now, it might take some getting used to if you're like me and used to scroll down to get to those settings, but I think this new setup is a lot clearer for new users. And Apple's added a new tab at the top for energy, and that's because of the next feature I want to get to, which is grid forecast. So when Apple announced their new Apple Watch models, they made a big emphasis on their efforts to be more environmentally friendly and to reach carbon neutral status across their products by 2030, which they're already going to do with the new Apple Watch. And to help you and me try to be more environmentally friendly, they added this grid forecast widget, which gives you an approximation of when you might have clean energy. Now, this is only available right now in the US, contiguous US, so not Alaska or Hawaii. I wouldn't be surprised if Apple rolls it out to more places soon, but based on your current location, it'll then show you when it guesstimates that there'll be more clean energy used to power your home versus other times. And you can get this in a little status on the Home app as well as widgets across your Apple devices. But I would really love to see Apple create either an automation trigger or condition for this. Let's say you want to trigger a scene, but when the energy settings are not clean, maybe you want your lights to go to 70% brightness instead of 100%. I just think tying this into automations would really help us rather than the manual idea of seeing it on the widget and then manually going and changing something in your home based on that data. Isn't that the purpose of the smart home? And let me know in the comments below if you're interested in seeing any videos around saving energy with your smart home to save you money and be better for the environment. I think I could talk to some really interesting people who have some good insights on this and make a video, but I just want to see if that's something you'd be into. Now, of course, the grid forecast has widgets, as I mentioned, and that brings us to the star of the show, which are the new home widgets, both in small and medium size. And like widgets across Apple's platforms and third-party apps now, widgets are interactive, which means you can touch them and they'll do stuff. So by default, when you set up these new widgets, they'll use a bunch of different accessories across your home that it thinks you might want to control. And that might be a good place to start, but I really recommend it's worth taking the time to customize these widgets. So you long press on them, edit it, and then you can select individual scenes or accessories that you want to control with these widgets. Now, we'll get to iPhone and how I use them there in a minute, but iPadOS, you can actually put these widgets on the lock screen, so you don't even need to unlock your iPad to see the widget, but to use it, you do have to either use Face ID or Touch ID to prove that it's you to the iPad before it can adjust your home controls. I love a lot of Apple's attention to security and privacy, but this kind of thing just seems like a little bit overkill to me. I'd way rather have the ability of anybody to pick up that part of the iPad and adjust the home controls if I've decided to put them there on the lock screen, or at least have an option to enable that for certain widgets. Now, the place I like them more on my iPad is just anywhere on my home screen. And now with macOS, you can run these widgets on your desktop. So it's really nice as I'm, let's say, starting a web meeting or just wanting to change the lights in my office. I can go straight to the widget on the desktop of my Mac running Sonoma and adjust everything accordingly. And the performance there for me has been super fast. Now, the real star of the show is standby mode, and I made a video when this first came out all about standby mode, but after using it this summer, I've found some really great use cases. One is just putting it in my office. I got one of these 12 South Forte stands for iPhone, which I think is a great stand for using it in standby mode. But basically, when you put your iPhone on a MagSafe charger that holds it upright and then you have it horizontal, so long ways, then it's gonna turn into this little smart display. And this is especially true if you have an iPhone 14 Pro, Pro Max, or 15 Pro or Pro Max, basically an iPhone with an always-on display that'll be able to keep these widgets up all the time. And you can use the Home app one to have a variety of scenes on there. And if you use an official MagSafe case and official MagSafe chargers, then the phone can remember where it's being placed within your home based on the different chargers it's put on. So you could have a different standby mode configuration in your kitchen, and then a different one by your bedside table, and maybe a different one in your home office. So then you could have different home widgets with different scenes there that make sense for controlling that area. And then if you'd rather have, let's say, the photo frame or the full screen clock instead of having the widget mode in standby mode, you can still control your smart home with Siri. So it really turns your phone into a smart speaker because it's just mounted there, and Apple's made it a step easier where you don't even have to say, hey now, you can just talk to Siri and it will perform whatever smart home stuff you want. Now, the one downside of the widget control, just like the iPad lock screen, you have to authenticate with Face ID. Now, usually if you're right in front of the phone's gonna see you and you're not even really gonna notice it. You'll just tap the button and it will go ahead and execute the command to your smart home because it knows you're right there in front of the phone. And that's really where having a MagSafe mount where you can adjust the angle of the phone comes in very practical. So like the Forte stand that I got from 12 South, you can make it so that whatever height you have it mounted and whatever height you kind of look at the phone naturally, it's going to be able to pick up on your face well. But again, I'd really love to see Apple make some options here where you don't have to do Face ID for a bunch of stuff. Then we could take an iPhone and make it more of a universal control for your smart home, something that even like the babysitter could use to control stuff. But I think in general, this is a really exciting year for Apple Home updates. There's standby mode and then a bunch of small, nice quality of life improvements. Let me know in the comments below if there's any of these that really stand out to you, or stuff you want to hear more about in detail, or maybe some things that I missed here on all of these updates. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. It really does help other people find this and the channel. Subscribe if you aren't already for more Apple and smart home tech videos. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.